Hello and welcome to Kinetics Credit Mastery. I am Jake Ryan and I'm here today to talk to you about credit, everything about credit, how it works, what it is, and how to leverage it in your benefit. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, and let's just say that information and education about credit and financial literacy was not world class. And I realized over time, especially when I got into entrepreneurship and building businesses, how important that having established and a seasoned credit profile was when it came to business lending and other things. Over time, I've realized that it's much more important even if you don't run a business, because there are completely legal loopholes. There are strategies that you can utilize your personal credit to actually generate income for yourself. And so we'll talk more about income generation in another video, but this is a completely free piece of content. This will be out on multiple platforms, a free course in credit mastery, every single thing you need to know about credit. We recently launched the Kinetics Flow State Strategy, which allows people to leverage their credit to build income. We've partnered with multiple credit repair agencies and spoken to dozens, if not hundreds, of different people that are full-grown adults, have been using credit their entire lives, but have a skewed understanding of how credit actually works. I wanted to provide this information as a free resource and a way that people can understand, without buying anything or signing up for any programs, how they can optimize their credit to help them, again, generate income, to help them offset expenses. There are a ton of different things that can be done with credit if you understand how it works. So with that being said, I want to get started. This is going to break down the most simple things all the way to a lot more complex things when it comes to credit. If you're somebody who understands the basics of credit, you may want to skip forward a little bit. If you're somebody who wants to know everything about credit, this is going to be a very thorough, expanded on conversation about credit. Kinetics Credit Mastery is here to teach you how to transform credit into capital, capital into cash flow, and cash flow into wealth. Now, understanding credit, which is what I consider your financial superpower. Okay, credit is one of the most important financial tools available to modern consumers and entrepreneurs, yet it remains widely misunderstood. This comprehensive guide that we're going to go through today and this free course is going to transform how you view credit from a necessary evil to a strategic asset that can actually accelerate your financial goals, open doors to opportunities, and build long-lasting wealth. Regardless of your job or income, you can utilize credit to create income for yourself. And I think it's really important that people understand this. So let's talk about what actually is credit. Credit is your ability to borrow money and access goods and services with the understanding that you will pay later. Essentially, it is trust quantified. When a lender extends credit to you, they are making a calculated bet on your ability and willingness to repay that debt. This is trust built on your financial history, your current obligations, your demonstrated responsibility. Every time you use credit and then repay it as promised, you strengthen trust. So every time you give somebody your word and you say you're going to do something, when you show up and you do that thing, you build trust. Essentially, you're building trust as a financial instrument. Lenders report your payment behavior to credit bureaus. They create a detailed financial report, and this data determines your credit worthiness or the likelihood that you will repay any future debts. Your credit profile includes payment history, amounts you owe, length of your credit history, the different types of credit that you have, recent credit inquiries, and all of those things together paint a full picture of your credit profile, which is essentially your financial reliability. Common mistakes that we see in credit is that most people misunderstand and therefore misuse credit. Credit can be your best friend or it can be your worst enemy depending upon how it's used. Overspending and leveraging credit to buy liabilities, such as careless shopping, can force you into a constant cycle of having more month at the end of the money, as Jim Rohn would say, instead of the other way around. When it comes to making purchases with your credit, you shouldn't be spending credit on things that you can't immediately afford with cash. Of course, there's emergency situations, but those are the exception to the rule. The problem that most people have is they get a credit card and let's say they have a $5,000 limit. They look at that as, I have $5,000 that I can go and spend, but I don't have to have the full $5,000 right now. I can just pay $150 a month and pay this over time. So people will then go and buy things that they want, which are 99.9% of the time a depreciating asset, or they are something that they're never going to get their money back out of. They're going on a shopping spree. They're going to make a purchase of a new phone that they actually don't really need right now because the one that they have works just fine. And everybody has been guilty of this, utilizing credit in a way where essentially you're making a purchase for something that you cannot afford in cash. So one of the most important things that you should understand is, yes, there are going to be situations where credit can be utilized for an emergency, a doctor bill, an automobile repair. Maybe you don't have the cash reserves to pay for it, so you can utilize credit in those scenarios. Let's say something goes wrong with your car, it costs $5,000 to fix. You don't have the $5,000 in cash, so you use the credit card and pay it off over time. That is a benefit to having credit because it allows you to immediately take care of a situation that otherwise you wouldn't be able to. However, this creates a negative cycle where people are constantly spending what they have on their credit card and then they're paying it off little by little. So they're spending perpetually more money than they actually have. That's what creates credit being used as a liability rather than being used as an asset. Let's talk about the reasons why credit matters more than you might think. For one, it gives you access to opportunities. Good credit can unlock lower interest rates on mortgages, auto loans, personal loans, and save you thousands of dollars over your lifetime by being able to access lower interest rates. Beyond borrowing, landlords check credit before rentals. So almost any type of housing, you're going to have a credit check. Employers, a lot of times now, are checking credit reports. Insurance companies are going to base your premiums off of your credit, okay? Utility companies, they're going to decide whether or not you need a deposit. That same thing goes with rental history, right? If you have a perfect credit score and great rental history, a lot of times you don't even have to put a deposit, whereas with a poor score, you may have to put down a deposit plus first and last month's rent. Your trust factor of being able to pay is not stellar. This helps you with more than just having a credit card to spend. Your credit profile is looked at in almost every single financial decision you're going to come across. And third is business growth. Strong personal credit can oftentimes serve as a foundation for business credit, enabling you to secure funding and negotiate better terms with suppliers, scale operations without depleting your personal capital. So if you are starting a business, having a great personal credit score will allow you to quickly build a business credit score by leveraging that personal credit to begin with. Once you get into business credit, you have a separate business credit score. But typically in the beginning, before you're able to build that business credit score, you're actually going to leverage your personal score for your business funding. Talk about credit as leverage, not a liability. The wealthy understand something that most people miss. Credit is not dangerous. Mismanaged credit is dangerous. When used strategically, credit becomes a powerful lever that amplifies your financial position rather than weakening it. While the average person may have more credit card debt than they can currently pay off, a wealthy person may have a ton of debt, but that debt is being leveraged to create income or to attain appreciating assets. So strategic borrowing. You can utilize credit to invest in appreciating assets and income generating opportunities, whether that be a business loan, right? If you can generate, if you have, let's say, an online business and you know that for every dollar you put into marketing, you can make $5 in revenue for your business, then that is leverage, right? Because if let's say I have a zero interest credit card if I pay it off by the end of the month. Well, if I utilize the credit at $1 and I make $5, I've now made $4 in profit off of someone else's money. This is the concept of OPM. This is most popularized in real estate. For example, you borrow money for a house. That house has a mortgage payment. If you can rent the house for a higher payment than the mortgage is, then you create cash flow, right? And now over time, real estate, historically speaking, has always went up in value over time. So the asset itself is going to appreciate over time, plus the cash flow from the asset is actually paying you. Now, just to be clear, when I talk about credit being leveraged and utilized to create cash flow, I'm not talking about traditional methods like real estate. However, this is a very popular way that people will leverage credit to create cash flow. Okay. Next is cash flow management. You're going to have 30 to 45 days from the time that you spend that money to the time that you have to pay that money back. That will allow you to keep money in high yield accounts while you're managing daily expenses. You can have your cash growing at X percentage points every single month, every single year. You can utilize your credit card to then spend your daily expenses on the credit card, and then you pay off the credit card with the cash. You can also build wealth faster. Low interest credit can accelerate wealth building when the return on your investment exceeds the cost of borrowing. For example, if you can borrow money against a home at 4%, but you know you can make 15%, then you've made a profit on someone else's money. Credit is also for emergency protection. Available credit allows you to have a financial buffer during emergencies, protecting your savings and investments or premature liquidation. For example, let's say you have your money in a stock account or a real estate investment. If you have $50,000 sitting in an REIT and it's making you 15% a year, if an emergency comes up and you need $5,000, for you to pull that money from that REIT, first of all, it might take time. A lot of times investments lock up your money for an extended period of time. So you may have to request money and it may take a couple months to actually get that money out. Second of all, if your stock portfolio is down and you have to withdraw money from that, then you're actually going to lose money because you're pulling money out as the stock is down rather than letting it ride out until the stock goes back up. So credit is great to be able to utilize in those emergency situations. Okay. Now, let's talk about your actual credit score. Your credit score is a 3-digit number, somewhere between 300 and 850, that summarizes your overall credit risk. Higher scores unlock better rates and terms. Most lenders consider a 740 or above an excellent score, 670 to 739 a good score, 580 to 669 fair, and anything below a 580 is poor. Your credit report is a detailed document behind the score. It lists every single credit account, your payment history, your inquiries, all your public records like bankruptcies, liens, anything like this, and it is reviewed regularly for accuracy, and that's what creates the score. So, how do they make up the score? Where does the score come from? Well, it's 35% payment history, meaning that you have paid your payments on time, whether this be mortgage payments, loan payments, credit card payments. It's making sure that you have built trust by saying, I agree to make this payment, and that you've made that payment on time. Every single time that you have a late payment, that is the biggest effect negatively to your credit score. Now, next is your overall credit utilization. This is a very misunderstood part of credit. Your overall utilization and your individual per account utilization is important. If you have, for example, 2 cards with $10,000 limits each, and let's say you've utilized $10,000 on one card, it's at 100% utilization, the other card is at 0. It would be better if you had 5,000 utilization on each card because you have a lower utilization per account, even though it's still 50% utilization, and that's not where you want it to be, you want to keep that utilization as low as possible, it would still reflect better to have that spread out. We'll talk about how to spread your credit out and how to optimize utilization a little bit later. But understand that your utilization is essentially the amount of credit that you have available versus the amount of credit that you currently have used. 15% of your credit score is going to be the age of your accounts. So the longer that you have an account, the better. If you have accounts, let's say you have a credit card and you've had it for 5 years and you never use it, a lot of people will say, well, I'm just going to get rid of that credit card. You want to keep that card because that card is adding age to your credit profile. Even if you're not using the card on a regular basis, use it for one specific thing, right? Use it for buying groceries once a month or for filling your tank up one time. Just something that you're using a small amount of and paying it off to keep that account active. If you don't use the account at all for an extended period of time, the account will close out. You want to make sure that you're maintaining all of the cards that you have and accounts that you have, because the age of your credit is extremely important. 10% of your score is based on your credit mix. This is the different types of credit that you have. So whether this be credit cards, whether this be mortgages, auto loans, personal loans, revolving credit, or closed-end credit. Closed-end credit would be a 12-month personal loan for $10,000, right? That's a 12-month loan once it's done. A line of credit, for example, would be a line that you can borrow against, pay back, and continue to borrow. A credit card is an example of revolving credit. You can continue to pay it off and use more of the credit as you go. And then the final 10% is new credit or recent inquiries. Inquiries are one of those things that everybody seems to have some sort of issue. If you're trying to get a credit card or you're trying to get a loan, for example, if you go to a car dealership to get a car loan, they're going to run your credit against 10, 20, maybe 30 different banks to see what deal they can get you. When it comes to an auto loan, if you actually attain one of the loans, the additional inquiries are supposed to fall off on the next cycle. That doesn't always happen. If it doesn't happen, you need to contact the credit bureaus and make sure that that gets removed. But you want to make sure that you're strategically applying for new credit at specific times. Let's just say increase your credit score quite substantially. You want to apply for as many new accounts in that short period of time as you can and get those accounts approved, because there's going to be a negative hit on your account just from having a new account, because it reduces the age of your credit history overall. However, if you can have multiple cards and get more access to credit and your utilization is lower, after a few cycles, it's going to then boost your credit. So we can get into more of that strategy as well. Now let's talk about the 3 credit bureaus and the scoring models. So you have Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. Mostly everybody knows this. Okay, Experian is the largest credit bureau. They maintain credit files on over 220 million customers, often considered the most comprehensive and typically the most influential when it comes to lending decisions. TransUnion serves primarily as a source for credit card issuers and auto lenders. Equifax specializes in risk assessment and fraud protection, and they are generally looked at more on the mortgage side. Okay. Each bureau may have slightly different information. So if you were to look at your credit profile, you might see that you have 1 negative account on Experian, but maybe you have 2 on TransUnion or Equifax. Not every single creditor is going to report your information to all 3 bureaus. Some lenders only report to 1, some lenders report to 2, some lenders report to all 3. They're not always going to be exactly the same. That's why having some sort of monitoring service that allows you to see all 3 allows you to get a better picture of what every single bureau has on your record. This is something that within the past decade has become a very misunderstood part of credit. There is 2 different scoring systems. So you have 3 bureaus, but you also have 2 separate scoring systems, a FICO score and a Vantage score. A lot of what people will look at now using a free service such as Credit Karma is going to show you your Vantage score. Your Vantage score is not the same as your FICO score. Your FICO score is the industry standard for 90% of lending decisions. And within your FICO score, you have multiple different scores. So you might have, let's say, a 750 FICO score. However, that's made up of multiple different scores inside of FICO. So you have your FICO 8, your FICO 9, your FICO auto score, your bank card score. These are all different scoring systems within FICO. Your Vantage score is a newer type of scoring system that is mostly based on credit cards, personal loans, and smaller revolving credit, not as much mortgage and long-term credit. Most of the time, when people use something like Credit Karma, they're going to see a Vantage score, and then they go to apply for a loan and they find out that their FICO score is actually quite a bit lower because it's taking into consideration a lot of other factors that are not in the Vantage score algorithm. So it's extremely important to understand your FICO score is a much more important score. Credit Karma and other free credit monitoring services are going to provide you with a score, and it's typically not going to be super far off, but it can be depending on your credit profile. So it's very important to understand what your FICO score is. Now, I am not affiliated in any way with MyFICO. I'm not referring them. I believe through all of the platforms that I've seen, myfico.com tends to be the most comprehensive. It's going to show you all three bureaus. It's going to show you all of your different FICO scores. It's going to give you the full details of every single thing that you need when it comes to understanding what your credit profile looks like and how your score is determined. Now, a lot of people come to us and they have negative things on their credit. Let's talk about how to handle those things. First of all, there are identity issues. Identity theft is rampant. It's very common that somebody has had their information stolen. If you are a victim of identity theft, you need to make sure that you file a report. You need to make sure that you have documentation stating that is what happened, and that will help you get those things removed from the bureaus. Disputing errors, these things do happen, right? Maybe you paid something, it didn't get reported in time. Maybe there's some sort of error, whether it be an address or something incorrect on the credit profile. Maybe there's somebody with the same name as you, something got reported to your credit report rather than theirs. These are all things that if it is a simple and valid issue or error, can be taken care of fairly simply by writing to the credit bureaus, explaining the situation, and typically they'll remove those things fairly quickly for you. You can also negotiate with creditors. If you have a legitimate debt and for some reason you are in a financial situation that you're unable to repay that debt, you can negotiate that if I'm able to pay this amount, or if I'm able to pay off the debt by this time, can you guys remove those late payments? You want to make sure any of these agreements that you get, you always have something in writing. For the most part, when it comes to smaller issues like this, the credit bureaus are fairly willing to work with people to take care of these things. Address collection strategically. Newer FICO models ignore paid collections, paying off old debts that have already had a 60, 90 day or a charge off. A lot of times it doesn't help you at all to pay off those debts. We're going to talk about that specific piece of this a little bit later, but I will tell you that if you have a debt that already has multiple late payments on it, it may not be the smartest thing for you to do to pay that debt, because we're going to talk about people who purchase debt and debt collection agencies, and we'll talk about some of the strategy behind that. The next just says be patient. Most negative items will fall off after 7 years. As they age, their impact diminishes. Just because you had a late payment 5 years ago, it's not going to affect you as much as if you had a late payment last month, right? So these things are taken into account. A warning about credit repair companies. There are hundreds, thousands of credit repair agencies out there, okay? A lot of times they're going to charge you a huge fee, and they're simply going to do very basic things that you could do yourself. And if they can't get those basic things wiped off, they're not going to be able to do it either, because most of them do not have the right strategies and techniques to be able to remove items. You want to make sure that if you are dealing with a credit repair agency, that you're dealing with someone who truly understands how to get specific things removed. There are credit repair companies, we are partnered with some of them, that can literally remove anything: bankruptcies, student loans, medical bills. There's a way to get this done, but there is a correct way to get it done. And if you're dealing with a lot of these old school law firms and credit repair companies, right, they kind of dangle a carrot, right? They might get one thing removed, and the next thing you know, it's a year later and you still don't have the important things that you need off of your profile. Very important to just make sure that when you're dealing with a credit repair agency, they understand what it is that they're doing. Now, beyond credit repair, let's say you have a good credit score, or maybe a great credit score, you're trying to get to excellent, or good and you're trying to get to great. Okay. This is not just about damage control, but about how do we optimize credit, what we call season your credit. So one is the authorized user strategy. Being added as an authorized user on someone else's established, well-managed account can boost your score significantly. The account's positive history typically appears on your report, improving your account age and your payment history. Let's say, for example, one of your parents has a card that they have had for 20 years and they have great payment history. They can add you as an authorized user onto their account, and if they want to give you a card and want to let you utilize the card, that's one thing, but they don't even have to do that. You can just get added as an authorized user and their account will report to your profile. Now you've added 20 years to your credit history and $25,000 in available credit. Now, when you utilize the authorized user strategy, there's a couple things that you want to make sure of. One is you want to make sure that the account is aged. At minimum, a 3-year-old account, but preferably 5 years or older is what you want the account to be. When you get into the 10 years plus, it's really going to help you. The second thing is you want to make sure that whatever authorized user account that you're getting onto, it's an account that keeps a very low balance. You don't want yourself added to a $25,000 limit card that's always running at a $20,000 balance, because that's going to hurt you instead of help you. So you want to make sure that you have an account that's over 5 years old, that has perfect payment history, and keeps a low utilization of 10% or less. That doesn't mean that they can't spend more than 10%, but it means that every single month it's paid down to where there's less than 10% of the remaining credit revolving. If it's a $20,000 limit card, you want to make sure that at the end of the month, no more than $2,000 is remaining on the balance and rolling over to the next month. Utilization optimization. You want to keep your credit card balances low and keep them below 30% utilization, ideally under 10% utilization. Now, here's the hack. You want to pay down those balances right before the statement cuts off. Make sure you understand where your statement date is, because it might be different from your due date. Your statement date is when you want to make sure that you have the lowest amount of utilization. For example, if you have a purchase that's coming up or an emergency, your statement hits in 3 days, it would be better to wait those 3 days and then utilize the credit so that it doesn't hit your utilization during that statement period. That way you have time to pay that balance down. For maximum impact, spread your balances across cards rather than maxing one out. You want to keep your utilization of any given account under 30% and preferably under 10%. If you have 3 cards that all have a $10,000 limit, it would be better if you had a $3,000 expenditure to put $1,000 on each card rather than $3,000 on one card, because again, that keeps your per account utilization much lower. You can also, every 6 to 12 months, as long as you have good payment history with your credit cards, you can ask for a limit increase. And it might only be a $500 increase, it might be $1,000, it might be $10,000. But the more you can increase your credit limits, as long as you don't exploit that and start spending more money, then that means you're always going to have a lower utilization. So if you have a credit card with the $5,000 limit, you have it for 6 months, you call them, you ask them to increase your limit. Maybe they increase it to 7,000 or 7,500, and you're still only using the same amount. So don't spend more money just because you have access to it, right? But utilize that to keep your utilization at the lowest point possible. You want to make sure that, first of all, they're going to add value once you start paying them. So you want to keep your applications for anything that's larger purchases or larger loans spread out 3 to 6 months minimum apart from each other. However, let's say that you go through a credit repair, and let's say that you go from having a 500 score to a 750. Well, when you get that 750, you do want to try to get as many cards as you can. Maybe instead of getting one card, you might get 3 or 4 cards, because it's going to increase your overall access to capital, keeps your utilization lower. Yes, temporarily your credit is going to take a hit because you have 4 new accounts. However, as soon as you start paying those accounts and they start reporting positively, it's going to boost your credit score. Understand that when it comes to your credit score, there's always going to be some sort of give and take. When you get a new account, it's going to lower your score, but as soon as you start paying that account and building history, it's going to increase your score. Don't expect your credit score to stay as a static number. It's going to fluctuate over time, and it really is learning about the timing of when to utilize the card, making sure that the card is paid off on a monthly basis. You don't want to carry over a balance because it also eats you up in interest, okay? Now, building business credit. This is not for everybody. Not everybody's starting a business, but in 2025, it seems like everybody has either a personal brand or side hustle, or they're selling something online. Business credit is very important and can be utilized for different strategies. When it comes to business credit, there are other ways that you're going to build business credit. So you also have your Experian and your Equifax business, but you have Dun & Bradstreet, which is the primary credit bureau for business. When you start out to get a business credit card, you're going to utilize your personal credit to get approved, but there are some tips to help build your business credit fast. Those are called net 30 accounts. For example, Uline is a company that provides office and warehouse supplies. If you open up a line of credit with them, you get net 30 account, which means you can purchase anything and you have 30 days to pay. So as long as you buy something very inexpensive, you can then take that thing, okay, and you pay it off within 30 days as you stated that you would, and that helps you build trust and build your business credit profile while utilizing your personal profile to get business funding through credit cards, business loans, whatever it might be. To build business credit, first you have to form your LLC. You're going to open bank accounts with that EIN number. You're going to register that business with Dun & Bradstreet and get Dun's number. And then you're going to build trade lines with net 30 vendors that report. So Uline is one, for example. I believe Office Max. There's a ton of different ones. If you just Google net 30 accounts for new businesses, you can find a dozen of them. The more that you have, the better. Just make sure that even if it's a small amount, that you pay it off in those 30 days and get that positive reporting going for you. Credit cards. Let's talk about the different types of credit cards. Credit cards, when used responsibly, are powerful financial tools that offer convenience, security, rewards, and support in building a strong credit history. Understanding the different types of cards and how to use them strategically is key to unlocking the full potential of these benefits when it comes to building credit. So, number one is secured credit cards. Secured credit cards are essentially for people who have no existing credit or have very poor credit. A secured credit card means that you have to deposit cash into the card to make it accessible. If I have no credit, poor credit, whatever it might be, I can put $500 onto a card and then utilize that card as a credit card. I'm still going to have to pay the balance, but it's secured by my money that I set aside for the card. These cards typically have extremely high interest. They are not recommended unless you are starting from zero or you're completely rebuilding your credit from scratch. Next is rewards cards. You're going to earn points or miles or cash back on purchases. Those are for people who really want the benefits and the point systems from cards and can pay off those cards on a regular basis. You may use, for example, an Amex Gold that gives you 4 times points on dinners. So every time you go to dinner, use that Amex Gold card. Instead of cash, you go out, you spend money on dinner, you get the points, and then at the end of the month or immediately, a lot of times what we recommend is as soon as you spend the money, you go directly into your Amex. I spent $150 at dinner. I got my 4X points, and now I'm immediately going to go pay off that 150 with my debit card. Now I was able to utilize the credit. I was able to earn the points, and the card is already paid off. Cashback cards, straightforward way to getting cash back. Instead of getting points, you're just getting cash back. Travel cards specifically are designed for mostly specific hotels, specific airlines. Those can get you perks like lounge access, travel insurance, no foreign transaction fees. These are things for people who are traveling a lot, right? I know several people in our network, myself included, have taken tons of trips, stayed in hotels, free flights, all based on having points that were built off of spending money that I was already going to spend, okay? And then business cards, again, are designed for your business expenses. Typically, they're going to have much higher limits. Those are utilized for, again, helping with cash flow, right? You need to spend X amount of dollars on marketing this month. That's going to return you this amount of profit. You can leverage that spending up front to then be able to redeem, to then pay off and redeem the points as you go. So key benefits to having credit cards is, number one, building credit history. Number two is fraud protection. If you've ever paid for something, let's say you paid for an online course or you paid for some sort of product and maybe you didn't receive the product or the course was misrepresented. If you paid for that with a debit card, you cannot charge it back. It's possible, but it is a process. Whereas if you pay for that with a credit card, you can typically just say, hey, I didn't purchase this, or I didn't receive the item. This isn't what it was marketed to be. You can do what's called a chargeback, which means that you're getting the money back and Amex or whoever it is will settle that with the vendor. That keeps you from paying for things that you can't get back. Fraud protection with credit cards, you limit your liability, right? If somebody were to steal your credit card and rack up money on it, it's much easier to get that reversed than it is for a debit card. Convenience and global acceptance. If you travel a lot, it's much easier to use your credit card than to carry cash. And also with debit cards, a lot of times you have to call and let them know every single time that you're going to move, right? So again, we talked about emergency fund access, exclusive rates, and rewards. There's also tons of different things that a lot of these cards come with. For example, additional insurance on specific car rentals, or it might be some sort of perk that you get, again, access to a lounge at the airport. There's a lot of different perks that come with having specific credit cards. So how to maximize your card's potential? Always pay in full and always pay on time. Don't spend money on the card that you don't have in cash. You should be paying either at the end of the month, paying off the entire balance, or paying it off as you go. Spend the money on the credit card, hop in the app, pay it off immediately, okay? Manage your utilization strategically. Again, you want to keep that utilization always under 30% and closer to 10 or less if possible. Okay, understanding fees and interest rates. A lot of cards have very high interest rates, but a lot of cards also have promotional periods. If you pay off your card within those 30 days, you're not paying any interest, but any balance that you let carry over, you're now paying interest on it. Some cards have 12-month no interest. Some cards there's a lot of different interest and fees. So it's making sure that you actually understand the interest and fees that come with whatever cards that you're using. Choosing your cards for spending based on what the points and perks of those cards are. For example, an Amex Gold is going to give you the best return on food. If you have 4 cards and one of them gives you the most points on dining, and one of them gives you the most points on travel, and one of them gives you the most points on groceries or whatever it might be, you always want to utilize that specific card for that specific thing. It's best to have a small diversified portfolio of cards, right? And choose an expense that each one of those cards is used for. Have a card for your fuel, have a card for your groceries, have a card for your meals and entertainment. And it's easier to keep a lower balance rather than just spending on one specific card, okay? And then monitoring statements and activity. So it's very important to have some sort of credit monitoring service. Like I said, my FICO is my favorite one, but there's tons of them out there. I would highly suggest staying away from the free credit monitoring services, because if a product is free, that means that you are the product. So that information that is being collected is being sold somewhere. There has to be money made somewhere. So just be conscious. A lot of times it's better to pay $10, $20, $30 a month to have a good insight to your credit profile than it is to have your information sold and out floating around the internet. Loans and mortgages are fundamental financial instruments that empower you, individuals and businesses, to achieve significant goals. From home ownership, education, expansion, understanding the mechanisms and interest rates and the approval process is crucial for leveraging them effectively and building long-term financial stability. Different types of loans. There's personal loans, right? This is debt consolidation, medical bills, home improvements. That's all going to depend on your creditworthiness, okay? Car loans, right? For the most part, it doesn't make sense to go out and buy a depreciating asset in all cash, especially if you're investing properly. If you're financially savvy, you can say, hey, I have $50,000. I can put that into this sort of account and make a 10% annual return. And I can get my car loan for a 4%, 5%, or 6% interest rate. In that case, I'm going to make my 10% with my money, right? And I'm going to pay the 4, 5, or 6% for the loan instead of paying my cash for the loan, because my cash can be making me money. Student loans and mortgages. Again, mortgages are 15 to 30 years. They come in various forms. Fixed variable rates. These are all going to be determined on your credit worthiness and your credit profile. So don't allow yourself to get stuck in paying extremely high interest rates or being stuck with undesirable terms just because your credit is not the best. You can always increase your credit score prior to doing these things, and it typically doesn't take as much time or effort as most people think. Credit monitoring and protection. Again, I think it's very important to have a credit monitoring system that you trust. MyFICO.com, again, is the one that I use. Not affiliated with them. Don't get paid or anything if you use that, or any other services for that matter. But again, you want to be able to have an overall view of your credit profile. A lot of these services also come with some sort of identity theft protection. They're also going to give you fraud alerts and allow you to freeze your credit. If your wallet gets stolen or you lose your wallet, you can freeze your credit temporarily. Or if your information got leaked and that there's a bunch of inquiries coming in, you can freeze your credit so you're not negatively affected by somebody else trying to access your credit profile. Proactive steps to protect your information. Secure your personal information, right? Don't have a lot of stuff out online. This comes with not using a lot of these free services. Review your statements regularly, or at least your credit profile, right? Make sure you're reviewing that regularly. Use strong and unique passwords. Don't be the person that uses the same password for every single thing, because once it gets utilized once, they can get into everything. Shred sensitive documents. If your identity is ever stolen, make sure that you contact your creditors and your banks. You want to make sure you place a freeze on your credit. You want to make sure you file a police report, and you want to report that to the FTC. You want to make sure you do these things, because having those documents is going to help you get those things removed if there are negative effects to your credit because of this. So, advanced strategies for long-term wealth. This is how we can help you guys understand how you can utilize credit to create income. Beyond basic credit management, advanced strategies transform credit from a payment tool into a powerful lever for wealth creation. In this final section, we're going to explore how sophisticated credit utilization can accelerate financial growth, facilitate strategic investments, and ultimately contribute to building long-lasting generational wealth. Credit stacking and optimization involves strategically acquiring and managing multiple lines of credit to maximize rewards, optimize cash flow, and secure funding for larger endeavors. Leveraging credit for investments. This is using other people's money, using the bank's money to leverage for your own investments. Advanced real estate financing beyond your traditional mortgages. There are home equity lines of credit. If you have a house that's paid off, you can utilize that home equity line of credit at a low enough interest rate and invest that money to where you're earning a higher rate than you're paying on interest. You can leverage this debt to create income for yourself. Business credit utilization. If you have a business that you're currently running, you can utilize business credit to grow and scale that business in excess of the current cash flow that you have. Wealth multiplication principles. The affluent view credit as an additional form of capital, not just debt. They use it to acquire appreciating assets, fund businesses, and bridge liquidity gaps, effectively turning borrowed money into greater wealth. This requires a strong financial foundation, excellent credit health, and a disciplined approach on investment and debt management. The life insurance legal loophole, okay? This is an incredible thing. I own a life insurance agency, and when I discovered this, I was mind blown. You can actually use your credit cards. There are things called high cash value life insurance policies where you can fund cash into a life insurance policy that allows you to access cash value. You can then live and pay your bills on credit cards, and then you can borrow from that life insurance policy to pay off the credit cards. This is actually a pretty wild concept, right? Let's say you put $10,000 a month that you're earning, and let's say your expenses are $8,000 a month. You can put $10,000 a month into your life insurance policy. You can then spend your $8,000 a month on your credit cards, and then you can borrow the $8,000 back from the policy to pay off the credit cards. Because you're taking out a loan that's not income, this also helps you with taxes. These are sophisticated strategies that are actually very simple. You're utilizing systems that are already in place to leverage these things as assets rather than liabilities. While advanced credit strategies have immense potential, these inherently carry risks. It's important that you understand diversification and hedging, not putting all your eggs in one basket. In the credit repair space, you help somebody get their credit repaired, help them get some business funding. They go and they put all this money into some new business idea that's a passion project, something they wanted to do, but they don't really know much about business. They end up burning through all their money. They now owe a bunch of credit card debt, and they don't have a business that's producing cash. So it's important to understand where you're putting your money. It's also important to have professional guidance. It's important to have a track record of seeing how things are done and understanding that people before you have taken this exact strategy and had the outcome that you're looking for. Interest paid on certain types of debt, particularly investments or business expenses, can be tax deductible. Understanding these things are very important. You want to make sure, especially if you're running a business, that you have a CPA involved. Otherwise, if it's your personal money, still, it's important to have somebody that understands taxes very well if you don't yourself, okay? When leveraging credit for investments, understanding how capital gains, short-term and long-term, are taxed is critical because, again, you want to make sure you're not investing in something and pulling out capital gains and then being taxed on that money in a way that is exceeding the amount of what you're spending to borrow the money, because then you're running a negative cycle. So these are all very important things to understand as you grow in using these strategies, whether they're personal or in business. So how can you build generational wealth through strategic credit use? The ultimate goal is to use these advanced credit strategies to create a lasting legacy. Strategic credit can be used as a cornerstone for building and transferring wealth across generations. You don't have to be a millionaire to implement these strategies. You can use your credit to acquire assets like real estate or a business that can be passed down. You can use credit to create higher education for your children, which again, in the long term is going to create a higher earning potential for your future generations, right? You can also use credit to aid in funding of initial capital to set up family trusts. Again, you can utilize this in insurance. There's a lot of different ways that you can utilize this to create financial stability for yourself. I want to give a quick preview of the Kinetics Flow State Strategy. I hope that you have learned a ton in this. If you know about credit, it's very basic information, but I come across people every single day who are 20 years old, 30 years old, 50 years old, and don't understand some of these basic things about credit. So I wanted to provide you with an overall understanding of how credit works, what credit is, and how you can increase your credit score without signing up for anything, without buying any courses, without hiding behind a $50 paywall. It's actually very simple. Remove the negative items from your account. Utilization is absolutely key. Get as much access to funding and to capital as you can, and use as little of it as you can, and you're going to put yourself in a better position. Pay your cards on time, pay your payments on time, pay your cars off in full. Don't pay the minimum payment and let yourself get drowned in interest. I want to touch base real quick on the Kinetics Flow State Strategy. If you want to learn more about this, there'll be a button here at the bottom. If you're seeing this on YouTube, there will be a link in the description. The Kinetics Flow State Strategy is something that we have put together that takes all of the principles that we just talked about with credit repair, credit optimization, seasoning the credit, building business credit, getting access to funding. And it's a step-by-step process where you can create a six-figure passive income starting with $0. And it only takes about 12 months. It can happen sooner. It can happen a little bit later. It really depends on the person, depends on where your credit is at currently. If your credit's in shambles, it could take 90 to 180 days to completely fix and optimize and season the credit to get to the point to be able to get funding. If you already have a 700 plus credit score, you can get started with your funding pretty much right away. What the Kinetics Flow State Strategy is, it is a very precise, very systematic, step-by-step path for you to go from wherever you're at, whether that's a 500 credit score that needs repaired or whether that's a 750 credit score, to creating passive income. And I'm not talking about starting a business. You're not investing in real estate. You don't have to learn anything new, okay? What you're doing is you're getting access to capital. You're deploying that capital in a way that protects it and keeps it safe and gives you tax advantages. And then you're moving that capital into a place that has a high growth rate with a very low risk factor. So what we do is we take credit, whether we have to build that credit, optimize that credit, whatever it is, we now get a great credit score. We have, let's just say, a 760. We then open a business under your name. We then access business capital for you for your new business, leveraging your personal credit. We take that funding, put it through a secure system that allows you to build long-term wealth, allows you to create protection for your family and your future, okay? And then we move that capital into a high yield investment that we have track records of proven results that are exceeding market rate returns on an annual basis, and you have 100% liquidity. So if you need to pull your money out, it's not stuck in a real estate investment that you have to sell. It's not stuck in an REIT that you have to wait 90 days to retrieve your money. It's not stuck in a long-term investment that you made a 10-year commitment for. So it allows you to leverage other people's money, the bank's money, the credit card's money, the business funding. It allows you to access that capital and deploy it in a way that generates you money every single month. You can continue to let that money compound. You can take some of that money out as a dividend, or you can take all your profits out as a dividend and have that as an additional source of income. We have a step-by-step plan that will allow you to go from $0. If you need to get your credit fixed, well, there's a cost in that, but it's not outrageous. We get that done for you. If you already have established credit, you don't have to spend anything. We go and get you the funding, okay? We don't charge any fees for allocating your funds into this system. We just do a profit split with you once we start making you money. If you would like to understand more about the Kinetics Flow State Strategy, you can click the button or below in the description and learn more about the Kinetics Flow State Strategy. You'll also be able to book a free 15-minute consultation if you're interested in learning more about that strategy. I appreciate your time. Hopefully this was helpful. I'm simply trying to provide information that I didn't have, and it took me a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of ruining my credit and rebuilding it, and a lot of headache and heartache that I don't think should be required for most people. I wanted to be able to provide some value to you. I hope you learned something today. If you did, please like, share if you're on a social platform where you see this, or share this with somebody that you know has great credit and wants to utilize that to create income for themselves, or somebody maybe who's struggling with credit, who needs to understand a little bit more so they can put themselves in a better financial situation. My goal is to help anyone and everyone access information that can help them in their financial journey, because money may not buy happiness, but the lack of money and the struggle with money affects millions and millions of people every single day. It's a passion of mine to help people understand how the system works and to use it to put yourself and your future family in a better situation. Thank you.